Tonight's Modern Men is powered by the Hero Initiative.
Are
you interested in becoming a hero, Drew? Go to Hero
I would
Initiative.
love to become a hero. Tell me how I can do that.
Drew, I need you right now to go to heroinitiative.org to see how you can be a hero to those creators in need.
Sounds easy.
Hey, how's it going, guys? We are back here on Monday night's Modern Men. And don't adjust your TV sets, podcast gimmicks, whatever you're using.
What?
He's back for a guest appearance. We got JB from
Comics.
How you doing tonight, JB?
I am good. I was excited about this one. I've been talking about this one for a long time. So when I saw it come up, I'm not missing it.
Nice. And also on the panel tonight, of course, as usual, full majestic beard and all, we got ComicManAndy. Andy, how's the beard today?
Wow.
He's speechless. The beard has muted his microphone.
The beard muted the mic.
So professional.
I might have a mutant gene going on with this beard here.
There you
got a mutant mic right now, so.
Drew, it looks like you brought some friends with you. How you doing, Drew?
Oh, yeah, man. I changed my setup a little bit. It's easier to show books this way because I have like a desk in front of me and I dig it. And I took the poster down. It's still over here. I got to work on my camera angle. We'll figure that out because like I can't look at you guys and look at what I'm doing at the same time now. It's a big, giant distracting thing over here. So you guys are going to see me go like this a lot tonight. I got some Marvel Legends here. I set up some toys, man. I was so psyched after reading this X-Men read that I wanted to play some toys, and I wanted to share that with you guys.
Awesome.
That's awesome.
So before we get into business tonight, let's go pay a visit to our live chat because we broadcast live every Monday here at 10 p.m. Eastern here on the Comic Core channel. We got Chris Barrett. He's hanging out in the chat as usual with his good friend and our good friend, Ricky Markstadt. And don't forget, want to talk Ricky Markstadt, visit the Discord, the official Discord for the Comic Core. The link is in the description. And thanks to Ricky in the live chat as well. And we've got Stay Puff 1983. What is going on, Stay Puff? And some Stream Elements robot. But anyway, we'll keep going. So I need you guys to stay tuned to the end of the show because we're not going to do our poll this week because we got to catch up on that poll. We've already got 2 reads queued up. We've got Hulk, Future Imperfect by Peter David and George Perez.
Ooh, Drew's favorite.
Drew.
It's a good one. I don't know who that other guy is, but Peter David, man, is he great.
And the following winner, and this is my favorite part right here, the following winner was Teen Titans, The Judas Contract by Marv Wolfman and George Perez. So we got George Perez 2 weeks in a row.
Who is this guy?
You're going to find out 2 weeks in a row, Drew. How do you feel about that?
I think I read enough Crisis to know who he is at this point. Just because he's dead to me doesn't mean that I don't know who he is. George Perez. Anybody who wants to know about that story, let me know, and maybe I'll make a video explaining the whole deal to anybody who hasn't heard the one story I have about that guy.
All I know is I got through the line pretty seamlessly. We took pictures together. It was a great experience. George Perez, one of the best. I can't wait to read.
I blame JD
2 weeks in a row.
I blame JD because I went with JD over to the CGC booth and I wasn't in line with everybody else. I followed JD and the speculation wave, and I shouldn't have done that. I shouldn't have done it.
But anyway, what I was saying is at the end of the show tonight, after we get done talking X-Men Messiah Complex, which I know we're all excited to talk about, we're going to be reassigning wild cards. Since Andy used his wild cards last week, we all get a wild card again.
Respawn.
But we're going to shake things up a bit.
Oh, no.
The wild cards now, there's a Marvel wild card, a DC wild card, and an independent wild card. And we're going to have a big wheel of names between the 3 of us, and we're going to decide who gets what by random chance. So if you guys want to see if Drew's going to get his coveted Marvel card or be stuck with that DC card of doom, or if Andy's going to get that independent card and make us read Saga again, or will I get the Marvel? Who knows what's going to happen, what's going to come of it, or will wild card be thrown at the end of this show after it's assigned? Like Drew could get that Marvel card and immediately drop it back down to push all the Perez stuff another week forward. Ooh. Who knows? You got to tune in to find out. But anyway,
very cool.
Tonight we're reviewing X-Men Messiah Complex. So for me, when I started collecting hardcovers, which it was around probably 2008, 2009 is when I really started building my hardcover collection. I was starting to, for whatever reason, be a little disinterested in, your individual issues and floppies. And I think Runaways was technically the first hardcover I've got. Runaways hardcover volume 1, Brian K. Vaughan. Phenomenal read if you guys haven't had a chance to read it. If you guys like Brian K. Vaughan's work on Saga, Why Last Man, so on and so forth, you probably should just go ahead and read Runaways. But anyway, the second one I bought was Messiah Complex because it collected so many books that were in X-Men lore at the time, like X-Men, X-Factor, New X-Men. We'll get into all that here in a few minutes. But it was just a good way, kind of pre-digital boom, to read a big story like this. And not to mention the fact that it's a good thing to take the conventions and collect signatures in as well. So cool. This really inspired me to build my hardcover collection. So yeah, I got some signatures in there, of course.
Big time in this. Big time in the signatures.
But I really enjoyed the story when it came out. And as the years have passed and, other great X-Men stories have come and gone, like recently House and Powers of X, of course, is really what's been on everyone's mind. I've kind of feel like Messiah Complex really isn't talked about too much, or not too many people are remembering it or haven't been recommended to reread it. I just feel like it's overall underrated. So that's why I was happy when Andy threw his wild card. So Andy, I'm going to ask you first before I ask JB his question. Andy, are you satisfied with your wild card pick?
Not only am I satisfied, but I'm left wanting more. Like, seriously, they leave this book at a point where it's like, no, I can't stop here now. Let's keep going.
So I want to get into JB's question here. So JB, of course, you're part of the show when it first got started and all that stuff. And then you decided to take a backseat to focus more on your channel. But when we picked Messiah Complex, you raised your hand. You're like, I need in on that show. So JB, yes. What encouraged you to join in on this show and want to read Messiah Complex along with us?
I remember reading this and this being one of those stories that jumped from title to title, following the larger tale with so many underlying twists and turns going on. I was chasing these books when they were coming out. And I, remember getting the trade and reading it again. I've read this story maybe 4 times and it still holds up in my opinion. The art is fantastic in a couple of these. There's a couple of ones that I'm not so hip on, but, overall it's such a complex tale with what's going on prior to, there's events that happen prior to this. Professor Xavier is not in charge of the X-Men, and it's an important key to this. And this creature that is growing and hunting the entire time that you very, very rarely get glimpses of. It's just fantastically the way this story goes, all the way down to the very end where you get the big climactic ending and Wolverine doing what he does. Yeah, man, I'm down to talk about it for sure.
Now, what about you, Drew? What does Messiah Complex mean to you? Did you get a chance to read this when it came out, or is it one of those things you got to enjoy later down the line?
I actually read this as it came out. Been going one of my favorite runs of X-Men that isn't a Chris Claremont story. I'm really, really into that run when Volume 2 switched over to X-Men Legacy. I think that those books were really, really killer at that point in time. I loved the Hope Summer stuff that spun out of this. This all spins into, after that, you're getting up into the more modern X-Men runs where you're getting the AVX is a really big event in Marvel that I enjoyed. A lot of people have critical things to say about it, but Hope Summers is a character that I really dig. This is her origin. You get some great Cable stuff in here. You get some fantastic new artists really getting to stretch their legs and be very expressive with great battle scenes. And you pair that with the X-Men that are just, every X-Man is featured at some point in this run.
I agree with that.
There's, I mean, not everyone, but at this point, you know, there's 198 living mutants with powers, and a good portion of them are featured in this thing. It's just a really good crossover story that, you know, you had to pick up all the issues, and as a sales tactic, that's why they're doing these crossover stories. You got to pick up all the issues, man, and this is just really killer. I dug it. You get the Purifiers in there. You get Sentinels in there, Nano Sentinels. You get Bishop's alternate future. You got Cable fighting for his future. You got so much going on here with the Marauders and Sunfire and Gambit, who just got out of the thrall of Apocalypse, and they're just working for Sinister at this point. You get great stuff with Sinister and Mystique. It's a fantastic book, and I think one of my favorite parts is that X-23, Laura Kinney, gets to really shine in this as well. Really great look at the younger mutants. Rockslide rules in this. It's just all the characters are really well served. Warpath was great. Everybody gets a chance to play.
Yeah, and I kind of want to talk about, what do you read before Messiah Complex? Because I've said many times here on Modern Men, I think the 2000s is like my favorite time to read comics. Like, you had on the DC side all the Jeff Johns stuff going on with the crises we've read and all that stuff, but over on the Marvel side, you had some great world building as well. And one of those players, in my opinion, was Brian Michael Bendis, when he did the Ultimate stuff and then came off of that onto his Avengers run and then did House of M. So you really start your world building at Avengers 500, where Scarlet Witch goes crazy and blows up Avengers Mansion, leading into New Avengers #1. But then also on the X-Men side, you have Grant Morrison and Joss Whedon and those big names building the X-Men universe, putting them in the movie costumes and then taking them right back out. So once you get to Astonishing X-Men with the Joss Whedon run, that's when Cyclops and Emma Frost really start to take their hold over the X-Men team. And of course, Beast changes into Cat Beast and all that stuff. And eventually you get House of X, where you bring those two teams back together. And then that's where we get No More Mutants, uttered by the Scarlet Witch. And we get weeded down to 198 mutants. And that's where I suggest starting with Messiah Complex. But Drew, are there any other reads you would recommend to somebody who was interested in exploring more Messiah Complex?
I think a good prelude to this is actually the 198 miniseries as well, which is kind of a anthology of sorts, which kind of follows all the mutants that are kind of depowered and the mutants that they're finding around the world who might not be X-Men, might not be fighters, but are being protected by being put basically in a concentration camp run by the X-Men. And it's a really, really weird book. With a lot of personality to it, and lets you know kind of the desperation of mutants by the time Messiah Complex rolls around. Everybody at the beginning of Messiah Complex is like stretched so thin. Like, everybody's on edge. Xavier just came back and everybody is not a fan. Magneto has been depowered. He's not around in this thing. You got Cyclops, who's now the leader and needs to strike out at what he feels is the father figure that abandoned him and really just lied to him. All the stuff with Vulcan. So I would say that Second Genesis Deadly Genesis. Yeah, Deadly Genesis is something that you might want to read. It's going to definitely inform you on where Cyclops and Xavier's relationship is at. So those are a couple things that I would definitely suggest checking out. But like you said, the downfall of Wanda is something that is the big lead up to this situation that they're in. And the fact that this new mutant is born, manifests mutation at birth, is a big sign of hope for these folks. And no, you're good. And that's why they named the baby that eventually. So we're we're going to see these X-Men who've been stretched to their limits finally get a little glimmer of hope in their darkest days. And I think it's a really, really interesting story.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only other thing I kind of thought of while you're talking, I believe it was Uncanny 450, where they finally get X-23 on the team.
That's true. And also the Rogue situation, that's kind of cool to talk about as well. So the entire run up until this point informs it as well. So if you just want to start with X-Men #1 from, was it 1964, and just keep reading, you're probably going to be well informed. But I think if you're looking for trades to check out, 198 is one you want to check out. House of M is one you want to check out, and maybe delve into a couple of the other things we talked about.
Absolutely. So, Andy, I know you said you were going to explore House of M a little bit if you had time. Did you get a chance to dive into House of M?
I got about 100 pages in before I really needed to take a break from reading. And then next thing I knew, I was zonked out in the chair waiting for Drew's show tonight, and I slept right through it.
Most people who watched it slept right through it too, Andy, so don't worry about it.
But I like where House of M is going. It fills in some stuff. It fills in some questions that I had.
Nice. Yeah, especially like we didn't even mention Layla Miller yet, I don't think, which we'll talk about her in a little bit. But if you also want to see what's going on with Layla Miller and why she knows stuff, House of M is a great place to start for Layla Miller, obviously. But before we get into our first impressions of Messiah Complex, I want to hit up this chat here because we got a lot of people hopping in here. We got my first subscriber ever, Fish Tropic. What is going on, Fish? Big thanks once again to Fish Tropic for the awesome AOK he sent me last week. I still got like a little Slimer and all kinds of stuff in the background now and a nice warm pair of socks. So big thanks to Fish Tropic for that. We got the Great Legend Show is in the chat. What is going on, Ledge? He wants people on the big screens tonight. He loves those big screen gimmicks and all that stuff. So what's going on, man? We got
Legend, he can hop on and produce. Just sign in, Legend. Come on, produce our show.
That's going to be so distracting. But we got Gore Vidal in the chat. Thank goodness. This guy has some of the best opinions and thoughts and observations. And I do want to read one or two of them right here. He says, I think Hickman has taken a page from this wonderful trilogy, especially his treatment of Cyclops, treating him like the true leader. And yeah, that's definitely something I was going to bring up tonight. And he also, by the trilogy, he's referring to this. He says, when I return to reading comics, you're a Messiah Complex, which is part 1 of the trilogy. And then parts 2 and 3 are Messiah War and X-Men Second Coming. I found them all in singles and read it in one sitting like a novel. It's great work. And you know, if he says it's great, it's probably great. We got Vince McLean, the comic machine. What is going on, Vincent? Nice to see you in the chat tonight.
Yeah, Vincent just got a nice copy of that first Gunslinger Spawn he's been sharing on his channel. It's a really clean copy. You guys check that out.
Nice. All right. I want to get into some first impressions here, and then we'll start talking about the differences in art. So, Andy, since it was your wild card, what are your first impressions of X-Men Messiah Complex?
I think I messaged you on this. I opened up and got to page 1, and I'm like, is this an Abercrombie and Finch underwear ad? They all look so straight up Gucci in this one-shot issue. I'm like, I'm taken aback. All right, roll forward. I fell in love with Nightcrawler again from this story. I love the way Nightcrawler's used in this. It's so awesome. This is like the equivalent of this year's action movie in the theater. Sitting down and reading this, I felt like I was watching an action movie. It's fast-paced. The pacing is, even though it's fast-paced, is done extremely well, considering they're bouncing from 5 different titles, right? 5 different titles, 5 different the different creative teams that are involved in this. It flowed really well. I was really appreciative of that. I got to know a lot of these characters that I hadn't met before, which was awesome. And they introduced them so well. It didn't feel jarring to me. It was like, okay, I get this. And then I think back a little bit. Okay, this is making sense. I pick it up really quick and I run with it. And this was just probably the best X-Men read I've ever done so far, to be honest with you. As far as pacing, as far as the artwork, there was some things that I thought were a little on the silly side. I don't like Cat Beast really all that much, but actually the art through and through is really good throughout the series. I had a couple more points I wanted to make. I'm glad I threw out the wild card for this because it was worth it. And I got to that last page. And I'm like, no, I can't stop here. But
don't worry, the run keeps going.
I know. And then we got the show. So I have to wait till after the show to get into the next one. But
yeah, I was gonna say one of my observations was they do such a good job, like letting the readers of, say, like if you're just doing X Factor, for instance, the first X Factor issue in this tie-in feels like an X Factor issue. The first Uncanny X-Men follows like you would be reading the previous Uncanny X-Men, so on and so forth. But once you get into the second and third part of each respective title, they really have interweaved the story of Messiah Complex at that point where it reads like a straight story. But they just do such a good job of using those first issues as an introduction point. So if you're just reading, say, like, once again, X Factor, you can kind of keep up with what's going on in that title, but you better put on your seatbelt after that because you're going to need to know everything that's going on from that point. But JB, what are some of your first impressions of rereading this again?
Rereading this again, I think it holds up. I agree with your statement that it almost does read like like an action movie because of the like the creature the whole time. You only get a glimpse of him and he's hunting and he's growing all the way through. It's done really well. You know what I also liked about this is when you were reading, I don't know if they do it in every book, but it felt like it. One sentence ends on the following page, which is going to the next story, as the transition from story to story is done very well as we're finishing this screen, and on the turn of the page, that is still from the previous screen, the first word bubble, as it's closing that sentence, and it flows into the next thing in the next story segment. It was done really well. Any story, and I've told you guys this, any story with a time machine, I'm a sucker for a time machine story, man. and the alternate timelines and going 80 years in the future and having New York City be a prison basically for mutants. Man, come on. This was just, I think on first impression, it holds up very well, and people who have never read it need to take a moment and read it because it's worth it.
Yeah, I agree. What about you, Drew? What did you think about rereading this again?
The thing that really grabbed me about this was the art. I love the way that this story is depicted. It's a little inconsistent in style at the beginning, I'll say, and it kind of comes back around and then dips again. But when Mark Silvestri is the weak link, I think you're doing pretty damn good. Oh my God, Humberto Ramos, early Ramos art in those new X-Men issues is just so delicious. And Bacalo's work is just amazing. And it's cool to see how he's grown from it because it was a little bit more loose back then. And this is so pretty. I like these books. I love these characters. Again, this to me takes X-Men where it's going. Young X-Men at the time, or New X-Men, or whatever they were calling it. That run was fantastic. You also had a really, really great X Factor Investigations run going at the same time. So there's just everything that comes out of this is great. You get the reformation of X-Force, which it leads into a really great run. I know Gore said something in the chat about it as well. When he was talking about X-23 in the series, along with their characterization in X-Force, which I also read with this wonderful trilogy. He's like, the X-Force comes back out of this into one of the best runs that X-Force ever had, into also Remender's Uncanny X-Force runs. Like, all of it stems from Messiah Complex into Messiah War. It's really, really great stuff.
Absolutely. And yeah, I'm glad Gore Vidal mentioned X-23. There's like, she's just one of many characters who has like benefits so well from this arc. Like you're really more invested in that character after reading Messiah Complex and going forward and reading those awesome runs. But before we get into that, I did want to mention the art, which I'm glad you brought up, Drew, because when you have very stylized artists like Humberto Ramos and Chris Bacalo, like I always was, in rereading this, I was fearing they were going to conflict and I would have a bad experience transitioning from issue to issue, but at the end of the day, I really respected each of their contributions and their uniqueness they brought to each of their titles. And not to mention the fact that I think overall my favorite art in this was Scott Eaton's X Factor. Like of all, like I figured like he would be the one I would like not acknowledge the most, but like his Xavier was like the most Patrick Stewart, Charles Xavier I've ever seen on the page. And I thought that was pretty cool. Like I know some people may or may not like that, but I think I preferred his art the most. And Billy Tan, we didn't talk about him yet.
No, Billy Tan was great.
I think was like one of the biggest stars that came out of the X-Men titles at this time. Like I think he was Brubaker's artist, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they had a whole. It's basically just a show off book of like the awesome talent that they had on the X-Men spot at that time. Andy, what did you think of the art overall? Was it too distracting going from like a Bachelot to Humberto Ramos, or did you just pay that no mind?
You know, I think that's where my lack of extensive experience with individual artists actually helps me. I felt like the art flowed well enough to keep pace with the story being told. But yeah, there were some nuances. I mean, I cracked the joke that the first couple of pages of the one shot felt like an Abercrombie and Finch underwear ad because they looked like chiseled right from like an underwear ad, kind of like holy moly. But then you talk about the X Factor books, and I'm like, yeah, that I had a sweet side for those X Factor books, and same with the New Mutants books, Drew. Those were done really well. So it kind of, I didn't feel like there were roadblocks jumping from story to story by any means, but I could feel the subtle difference. Well, not subtle difference. I could feel and see the differences.
Big differences. There are big differences.
There are big differences, but
Yeah.
it just, I don't know if the story's just paced and written so well that I was distracted from those where I just took it in and enjoyed it and it didn't throw red flags at me. It didn't throw a roadblock at me. It didn't hang me up at all.
I think that they do a good job of making each issue of each different series like a chapter in itself of this bigger story, but you're seeing it from different angles in a way that's really organic. And once it all gets rolling, like it's all one big mess of a story that just has so much going on from each angle. But I love every piece that's kind of, and the way it resolves nothing's really left hanging. You're just left for more room for you to move forward through the story.
Yeah. What about you, JB? I know you said the art was a little distracting at times. What did you think?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because now I'm going back through here to see who was the artist responsible for each of these. And you're right. When Silvestri was the weak link in here, because I really think the one shot was the one art that I was not really feeling was the one shot. And then it gets into the Uncanny X-Men. But my favorite art, I think, was, and I had to go back to see who the penciler was Scott Eaton on the X Factor run. That was really cool. And definitely what Humberto Ramos was doing in this new X-Men, that was definitely different, I think, at the time. That was really good. So I think my favorite was probably the X Factor artist, Scott Eaton.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, all the love for Scott Eaton. That's really awesome. Yeah, let's get into the chat before we keep going with the story. We got the Uncanny Kyle Waka. He is in the chat. I know he is he's as big as an X-Men fan as it gets. So what's going on, Kyle? I'm very happy to see him.
He just did a video on his for the first time in a long time on his Marvel Legends collection. He's got a couple that I'm looking for. I mean, that dude's got some pretty sick action figures.
And we got Ruben Guzman in the chat as well. What's going on, Ruben?
Cowabunga.
But yeah, I mean,
Guzman.
I guess we could try to tackle some of the story points now. The way I described it, like last week when we were talking about it, is it's just basically you have Hope who is born. The impact of her birth is so crazy that goes and like almost makes Cerebra explode. It causes the group called the Purifiers find out about it. Mr. Sinister's group called the Marauders find out about it. And it just turns into one big old battle royal before the X-Men even set foot in Alaska to go find out what's going on. So that's where we get into the Mark Silvestri one shot of them. They're just looking at the damage, trying to figure out if this baby is still alive. And they're just finding out how nasty and terrible the Purifiers are. They're talking about how they burn children to just kill one mutant. And I mean, it's some awful stuff, especially I think it's Nightcrawler who's doing a lot of this description. And when he is sad, you feel it. So what did you guys think of the one shot?
I thought the one shot story was, again, the art was a little different for me, but I think the story was cool. The way that when you get to the aftermath of a scene and you don't know what happened, but you've got a telepath and they find a lady and they, okay, here, let me figure out what happened. And then they recant what she saw in this battle royale that's happening here. Another interesting point of that, coming out of that was as they're flying off, not having the baby or not, looking for the lead, they go, don't you think we should have picked up the bodies of the mutants, because the world's gonna hate us again, thinking that we're responsible? And he's like, we're at end of days right here, guys. That's the least of our problems. Screw those guys. Let them clean up their own damn mess. And the mess does get cleaned up. And how it gets cleaned up, I think, is a big shocker at the end of it when you get that, this creature that is feeding on these mutants.
Yeah, and then that's where you get introduced to Predator X. And I know he's watching still in the chat. Ricky Markstad, I think, would be a huge Predator X fan. Like, his arc, if you want to call it a story arc, it reminded me so much of Doomsday Is Coming and Superman back in the day, where you kind of see, the only thing he was missing was that like weird green outfit. He was already like just a monster in the wild, but he was just this looming creature who was in the background of pretty much 13 issues, growing and becoming more sinister to the point where you get him at the end of the story and he's just like dropping a bomb on a battle royal toward the end of this. But Andy, what were your overall thoughts on this first one shot to get the story started?
Like I said before, I really felt like I was involved in an action film. That first couple of minutes, they throw out that hook and it's baited really well. What's going on? What's happening? There's a lot of action going on, and I'm drawn right into the story. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff that I haven't read before, so it was really intriguing to figure out what was happening, what's going on. And then, like JB said, with leaving the bodies behind, that was like, well, that doesn't seem normal for like X-Men kind of stuff. So this is pretty serious. So it felt very cinematic to me. Just that first little bit, that baited hook, and then it takes me along, and here we go for the ride.
Yeah, absolutely. Drew, what about you?
Yeah, the one shot story wise is just top notch. You get all of the emotion behind Cyclops and Professor Xavier's conflict. You get all of this emotion of these X-Men who are fearing extinction at this point, and the first new mutant that is manifesting has caused such destruction and such just ridiculous amounts of violence. Like the Marauders come in, and it's actually like one of my favorite teams. I really love the Sunfire Gambit and Grey Crow team of Marauders. Just really dope. And they're fighting against the Purifiers, and the Purifiers are burning babies, and like the first person who's alive that you see is holding the charred remains of her daughter.
Right.
It's just such a heart-wrenching and also disgusting, but like it motivates your feelings as you go into this. You feel for the X-Men, and I really love the way that this sets things up.
Yeah, absolutely. And they do have a lot of awesome character moments in that one shot and then going forward. So I want to talk a little bit about just the arcs that the characters have in this, because there's so many characters and so much stuff going on that, like, can you pick just one character arc that was your favorite? So that's what I'm asking you guys to do now. So Andy looks confused, so I'll cut to Drew.
Character.
So Drew, did you have a favorite character arc throughout Messiah Complex?
I really dug Wolverine's arc. He is what he is when he begins, and he is what he is at the end. But him dealing with this and seeing his reactions to everything, he's kind of my favorite character to follow through this. But I also really enjoyed all the arcs of the new X-Men. and they start off feeling like they are underappreciated, like they're not being utilized, and they pretty much all learn their lesson, because being involved in this, it comes at a great cost for them.
Yeah, and I think Surge is like the one character I knew nothing about at all before reading the CompleX, and she was probably like my favorite new X-Man to follow, because you didn't really need to know the details of like this massacre that happened with the new X-Men and what the 4 other Predator X's, but they did a good enough job through her anger telling you what happened previously. So I really liked what they did with that character. But JB, what about you? Did you have a favorite character arc?
I kind of feel like this story is Cyclops' story, and in the, he dominates the beginning of it. He tells you that he's in charge. He is in charge. But ultimately, this comes down to, he's chasing his son, and he has to make the decision about what's he going to do here. And then, oh man, the decision he makes, it says a lot about his character and what he's about, and how important it is to him that the mutant race goes on, that he was willing to make the big move.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yeah, he was definitely
also shown through his daddy issues at the same time.
True. Yeah. And those interactions with Professor Xavier, and he's not holding back, and Professor Xavier could read his mind, but he ain't holding back. He's telling him how it is. No, I thought he was my character. I latched onto him early and just kind of wrote him through the book as the lead guy.
I think he really is the spine of this book. If you think about it, the more you dig into like what the X-Men are doing and why they're doing it, it leads back to Cyclops' leadership. And
it does. Even the interaction with the kids. He tells them, I'm gonna need you, when I'm ready. I'm gonna call you.
Yeah,
it takes on a Captain America vibe to him. He's very militaristic. And like everything happens, and you get these great action scenes and these great emotions, and then like I don't mean to poo-poo in Cyclops, but then the next scene is him being like, I need field reports. Like,
yeah,
he always needs a damn field report. And I think this really does, this whole trilogy of stories really does lead into the Schism, which is probably my favorite era of X-Men, follows that and is right before it. So I mean, this falls into that category.
That decision when they make, him and Professor Xavier, when they make that decision that we need to put X Factor back into play here. We need, we're in dire times. We need somebody who's going to kill some people. We need to get X Factor back together and get them on this. I thought that was huge too.
Yeah. And I don't know whose line it was. It was Cyclops or Wolverine. I think it was Cyclops, but I could be wrong. Where the new X-Men, they're just being a bunch of babies, and they want to like run off and go do their own thing. And they're just like, what do you mean you're just going to let us go? Cyclops like, that's right, we're going to let you go, but then we're going to drag you back because we need you, because there's only 198 mutants left or something like that. What about you, Andy? Did you have a favorite arc in this one?
I'm torn. I'm really torn. I love the Nightcrawler arc. I really do. This Messiah Complex made me fall in love with Nightcrawler again. I feel like Nightcrawler, in what I've been able to read in X-Men in the course of my life so far, I feel like the Nightcrawler has been an underserviced character for a long time. But looking back, I'm torn here. The Bishop story arc, that was really interesting in the internment camp. Layla and James Madrox,
the multiple man.
A multiple man.
Okay, that was dope. That was dope, where they get put into the future telepathically to find out what's going on, and then to see their struggle, not only their struggle, but they bounce off of each other really well. And then they end up in that internment camp. The heads are getting shaved, they're getting tattoos. It's very there's a lot of symbolism. It's very symbolic of World War II in the internment camps and what happened back then. And that hits home. That's some parts of history were shown in there in that story arc, and that was very realistic. and then they run into Bishop, but it's Kid Bishop, and then it starts clicking like, oh, here we go.
He's an angry little boy.
Yeah. I mean, I have to pick Nightcrawler's story arc as my favorite of the run, but I was probably more excited for the Multiple Man and Layla run, or the story.
Yeah, Layla Miller and Multiple Man have this great rapport with each other. I just love this. He has this one line where he says something about like sardonic remarks or what heroes do. And it's like, it's hilarious. Yeah. I just picture it in a Marvel movie, and I think that would really work.
I really like the part where they're at Forge's front door, and she talks about how she just knows stuff, and she figures out that Forge is a hologram only because he doesn't have a shadow, and he thought it was
shadow.
Yeah.
It's like some stuff I just know because I'm observant.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Madrix is also like, I just really didn't want to use your Hello Kitty umbrella, so I just stood in the rain instead.
His first two dupes were great too. He's like, my dupes are not really paying attention. They might not listen to me. And then he spouts off two dupes, and they're both like, I just want to complete the mission. He's like, we got two good ones. Let's go.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, that's what I was going to say. For my pick, I kind of wanted to go Cable because honestly, I've never really cared about Cable, but this story arc did him so many favors. And going forward, and the individual title he got after this was so good. But he wasn't my favorite. I also kind of wanted to pick Bishop because you get to see this crazy heel turn that happens with Bishop, and you actually kind of almost believe why he's doing what he's doing, but I couldn't pick him either. I'm going with Madrix because Madrix is a character I could not have cared about whatsoever before reading Messiah Complex. After reading his character arc and his adventure with Layla Miller in this, I actually put X Factor on my pull list after reading this back in the day. So, like, I've never really had that experience in one arc of not caring about a character at all, then going and wanting to, like, add their book to my pull list. I just really enjoyed the way that Peter David structured X Factor. Like, they bring him in as basically he's a private investigator. He's not even like a mutant team. It's just a team that's helping him be private investigators. And they help mutants in need, basically. That's why Siren's on the team and Guido / Strong Guy. And Layla Miller just happens to be there because she knows stuff. And then Monet's thrown into the team like a wrench. So it's a really interesting book. And then they got Richter as well, who is a depowered mutant, but he's still, just because he doesn't have mutant powers doesn't mean that he's not friends with those guys. So he's still hanging out with those guys.
And he goes undercover, which
he does go over undercover. Absolutely. So Richter kind of gets a cool moment or two in this story where he goes undercover to find out what the purifiers are all about. And he uncovers a startling truth that they have like all of these weaponry and all these other locations with more weaponry that the X-Men and the mutant kind, they don't stand a chance against the purifiers, let alone everything else that's going on. But I had to pick Madrix. Just like I said, I never really cared about the character, but even that scene was perfect that Drew described, where he's like, I don't really control what my dupes think, but here we go. And then one's like, I'm here, mutant cause. All right, let's go. And it's like, the other one's just like, let's just get the job done. Let's go. And then through all that, you get all these laughs. And by the time you're at the end of it, like they both have shaved heads. They got this DNA tattoo. It gets super serious and crazy to the point where you feel so bad for him. And then Madrix gets revived and gives them the truth about Bishop. But the only thing he's concerned about is Layla. And that's where you really start to get to see their relationship take off.
What did you think of the twist when Layla goes in with one of the dupes through the time warp? And he's like, well, just bring her back. And he's like, I was never bringing these guys back, man. This was a one-way trip.
We used but your dupes are disposable.
Your dupes are disposable. You're supposed to you harvest that information when they die. And that's exactly what ends up happening. And she, makes sure that happens as soon as possible. Because as soon as they get that information, it is right now. Here's the information. I'm sorry I had to do this. Boom.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that my only regret from the X Factor side of things is you really only get to see the Madrix Layla storyline, a little bit of Richter, and the only time you really get to see Siren is she's just going to help this guy named, was it Peepers? Who's just driving along. He's being hunted by Predator X.
Yeah.
He doesn't stand a chance.
He just finds a carcass.
Poor Peepers. So there's 197 mutants now, basically. And then Monet's just kind of hanging out and Guido too. Like they're just in the background.
Let's talk about something real quick. You know, I think they've kind of been consistent. Maybe they haven't, but the baby being born and blowing out all of the telepaths, you know, for a while, just blowing them out, considering that mutants aren't supposed to really develop their powers until they're teens, that meant this was something huge. This was a huge major event, which told you that, wait a minute, this doesn't normally happen like this, man. Babies don't make the machine go off. So, and what did you think of the three daughters? They were creepy, man. The three daughters of Emma. Yeah, the cuckoos. Man, those are some creepy, man. Creepy.
There used to be 5 of them.
Yep. There's 5 again.
No, again, that was another point of this story that Drew made early. If there's only 190 mutants left, how many do you think they actually name in here? I bet you half. I mean,
at least half.
There's so many mutants that are depicted to even get a line or two in this tale over the course of these 14 or 13 books.
That was something they did that, as an editorial decision, you feel like they did it because there was just too many different mutants running around. It was too hard to keep track of all of them. And I think that this was the writer's way of saying, like, oh, you think that, there's not a lot? Okay, 198. There's still a bunch of mutants we can use. Like, settle down. We got this, kids. Like, some of these depowered stories are going to be fun to tell. And not everything's going to be doom and gloom. Yeah, we're bringing back more mutants. We are going to make more mutants eventually. That's what this hope thing was all about. And in the meantime, here's an event with 67 of your favorite mutants who are still around. Let's look. We got a lot of room to play here. So I think it was really a statement by this creative team to just show everybody that there are still plenty of mutants to go around.
Yeah. So is that it for Layla?
In this story, you'll see her again in X Factor. She pops back in pretty quickly.
Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely not the last you'll see of Layla Miller. I can't remember. I know she was in the
for a while. She was
right before Powers and House.
Yeah, and for a while she's like the favorite plot device of like Marvel writers. It's like Bendis created her as a plot device, and she's this is the first time she really has a chance to be a character outside of the X Factor run.
We got some people hopping in the chat here. We got Brutus Scar. What is going on? He says, I wish I was mutant so I could see 36 seconds into the future. We got Southern Comic Geek. What's going on, man? He says Peter David had to rewrite X Factor title with Multiple Man's baby missing out because of Hope being born. Yeah, I remember at the time, Peter David was pretty critical of all of these tie-ins and stuff because he had one plan for his book, and then Marvel was like, oh, nope, time for another tie-in. So he did such a good job adapting to that, though. You never know, he would have disagreed with all that, but this is stuff Peter David did say back in the day. So thanks for mentioning that, man. I'm glad you jogged my memory on that one. And, of course, Scott Evans hanging out in the chat, he says, when he referred to himself as Peepers, he was like, bye, Peepers. So we talked about the X Factor side of things. I kind of do want to talk about one person who had another great arc was X-23. And one of my favorite parts was when they encounter the Purifiers and we get that fight with Lady Deathstrike. So I think that was the ultimate hook for me in this. So JB, what did you think of Lady Deathstrike versus X-23?
First of all, I want to make sure everybody just understands Lady Deathstrike's a bad mamma jamma. She is a bad woman. And when X-23 gets in there and she's holding her own, but it looks like she's defeated and she's she's basically getting the stern talking to, like, you think you can mess with me? I'm Lady Deathstrike. And then, she gives her that kick where, with she got the extra claw on the toe, and she's like, you missed. Did I? And she had pierced that line and it turned the whole fight. Man, I really like what they did with X-23, man. She was great in this. It was cool. That was her shining moment in in this battle that's going on. She takes on the big bad Mama Jamma, who's really laying waste to people, and she puts her down. I thought it was good. Good stuff.
Dude, X-23 is one of my favorite characters. I keep trying to get these guys to put all new Wolverine on that poll. We need to read that soon. That is a fantastic run. I'm also a huge fan of anytime she's really been portrayed. I loved her in X-Men Evolution.
That was it.
I loved her in Logan. I thought that was a great opportunity to use her as a character. I've loved her in everything they've done, and they've kind of poo-pooed her existence in House and Powers and this Dawn of X stuff, but she's actually coming back from that very soon as well. So we're going to get more Laura Kinney everywhere, and man, just a fantastic character. Seeing her shine here was great, and the Ramos and Bachelot art with her was just a stunning display, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that was my favorite Ramos art of the whole series, is when you had that fight. He did. I prefer his Lady Deathstrike the best out of the 5 artists when they got a chance to draw Lady Deathstrike. But Andy, what did you think of this fight?
I thought it was fantastic. Like you guys have said, Lady Deathstrike's a badass that's been around for a long time that isn't taken lightly at all. And for Laura Kinney to come in and just like where was it right there? Southern Comic? No, Scott Evans, quote unquote, you heal too slow. She's picking away at Wolverine while she's fighting Lady Deathstrike. It's a good time. It's badass. And it's gory. It's bloody. It's action-packed. It's action done really well. It's one of the things I really like about this read through and through from start to finish. They pack so much into each panel that it doesn't let you breeze right through. There's so much going on here. You have to soak it all in and enjoy it. And it's eloquent. This fight scene, this battle is very dance-like.
That was the kick too, right? That was the kick. That was the kick.
Yeah, and they do a good job of that, because you really don't see her use the foot claw up until that point. So it's even kind of a surprise as a reader when that happens.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Nah, but I kind of forgot to mention what happens, I believe, right before this. And this one, Cyclops is just pushed to the edge. There's been an attack on the mansion. The team is spread really thin, so he decides he has no choice. He calls Wolverine into his office, basically. And he's like, we need X-Force back. Get your best guys. And he puts together this team of just crazy trackers and murderers. And Caliban's there because he's a tracker too. And that's how they end up finding the Purifiers. So, Drew, what did you think about seeing this awesome formation of X-Force?
I love it, and I love the fact that Warpath gets another chance to really shine. He was
awesome in this.
Dude, his arc was great too. I love the way that he was kind of like, all right, the future of our race is really important to me, but like Cable's really important to me too. So like, I'm really torn here. There's got to be a way for me to kind of find a middle ground. And just to see him, the first second he kind of jumps in during the Sentinel attack, and he's just like knives out, ready to rock. Really, really, really badass moment.
Yeah, and you kind of got to remember too, he's one of the new X-Men, so he's feeling the loss of all of these previous new X-Men that have died as well, and he's really close to Surge, it seems like. So he's just ready to fight anything and everyone at this point as well. But JB, you said you liked Warpath as well.
Yeah, that Sentinel attack, that was another great twist. When those because first the guys are like all bored, man, can we go home? Are you sure, man? No, someone already called in. You got to stay on. Oh man, this sucks. Yeah, and then these Sentinels turn on the mansion, and it's all hell breaking loose, because these were Sentinels that were basically designed to be guarding the mansion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It was nuts. Now, when Warpath busts out with the 2 blades and he goes flying through the air, hi, into the Sentinels. Yeah, that's good stuff, man.
So the Sentinels were originally there to guard the mansion then?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they had been they had been reprogramming. That's why they kept going reprogramming complete. And they went from attacking him to reprogramming complete, kill them now. They were trying to kill him. They're like, all right, we got to take these guys out.
Yeah, that's what the crazy thing is. It's that it was turned out to be, I believe that was all Bishop organizing that.
And it was
attack.
Bishop. Yeah, they were thinking that had to be Cable. Cable had the technology, and it wasn't. That was the twist, that it was basically looked like that was a Cable thing, but it was a Bishop.
Yeah, you see him later planting those seeds, like, oh yeah, it had to be Bishop at the mansion, or Cable at the mansion, manipulating the Sentinels and all that stuff, and only Cable could take out the psychics because he's at nope, it was Bishop. So we're almost at an hour here, so we'll kind of jump to the final fight here. But who is the random person in this final fight that teleports the new X-Men to Muir Island? Pixie. Drew, what can you tell me about Pixie?
Pixie is very much like magic. She uses magic. It's like her mutant power is pretty much that she's like a fairy and she can use magic. So she's like casting a spell basically every time she's using her powers. It's pretty badass. But she's young, she's new, she doesn't know what she's doing. So that makes her abilities a little bit unpredictable.
So that's how the new X-Men and Predator X get there. But I do want to talk about what happened on Muir Island for all this to happen. So basically, the Marauders, they got Cable, they got the baby. Everybody's forming in on Muir Island. But the main storyline going on in the background is that Mr. Sinister has been assassinated by Mystique, of all people. So this, talk about coming out of nowhere. So we find out what's going on with Rogue.
It was fantastic.
Absolutely. You want to talk about that, JB?
Well, first of all, Mr. Sinister loves to gloat about how he's just the shit. He's Mr. Sinister, and he's basically telling her, I don't care what you think, this is what's going to go down. And she takes his face and jams it down into Rogue's face, and you can see him just wither away, and you're like, did that just freaking happen? Holy moly, this was a double cross. I wasn't expecting this. Because you come to find out Rogue Mystique has got one thing in mind. I need to bring Rogue back. Yeah. And this baby, I'm willing to sacrifice. This baby must be what did she say? She had conversations with who? She thought that this was a prophecy happening, and it was. I guess it was actually. But she thought that this was a prophecy happening, and she was willing to sacrifice the baby, which it doesn't. But you do end up, resurrecting Rogue, who had been in this coma. And what does Rogue do? Yeah, she's like, thanks, but no thanks. And she freaking kills her. Right? I mean, she does. She lays hands on her, and then she says, "It." It was funny because Rogue says at the end, she goes, "Man, I wish I wouldn't have done that, because when I woke up, I didn't have all of those memories from all of those people that I've touched, and now I've only got one extra memory in my head, and it's hers."
Yeah. She said she isn't dead though. At the end,
she's not dead.
No, she didn't. No, you can't kill Mystique.
Yeah, I touched her, and got her memories, but in real, the Southern slang in here is so rogue.
Yeah.
But she did. She woke up with no memories but her own until she touched Mystique.
Yeah, They're all wiped clean.
I think that the main reason I really like this side stories, you finally get revealed why Gambit is doing what he's doing. Because from the first one shot, you see Gambit with the Marauders, not the X-Men. And I just kept asking myself the first time I read it, why is Gambit with the bad guys, basically? What is going on here? And you finally get your answer. He did it for love. He wanted Rogue back, and he was willing to do anything to get Rogue back, including turn on the X-Men. His relationship with Rogue means that much to him that he's going to do this task with Mystique. He's going to team up with the bad guy to bring his most loved person back to life. But when he finds out that it's going to sacrifice Hope, he knows Rogue would never, allow that. And if he has any part of that, he will never be in good graces with Rogue again. So that's when Gambit ends up saving Hope, basically. So you have all that going on in the background. Meanwhile, the X-Men arrive to Muir Island to fight the Marauders, which they are completely outmatched because the Marauders have been specifically designed to fight the X-Men. They are trained just to fight the X-Men. So there's no chance that a beat-up, battered X-Men team without their healer is going to be able to take on the Marauders. So it was almost like luck that the new X-Men got ported in there, because Cyclops even points out from a tactical standpoint, they have no plan for these new X-Men. They're
they don't know how
wild
to
card
fight these guys. Yeah, they don't know what their abilities are. They've never trained for them. So yeah, that was huge.
So boy, did that put him over. And then you have the other crazy alliance of Cable and Xavier, because Cable got so desperate, he reached out to Charles because he knew he was the only one left who would listen to him at that point. So you got all these storylines finally converging on Muir Island. So this is the battle royal I was talking about last week when I was hyping up this book. So Andy, what did you think of this big battle royal between all of the characters from these 5 books?
This was nuts. Like I said, action flick here. There's so much going on in the panels that you do have to pause a little bit to take it in. You don't want to blow right through this and miss a bunch of stuff, but it's done very well. It's not super confusing. It's not. They do a really good job conveying action in all of the panels and on the pages. It isn't flat. Like for just a 2D image, it's done really well. And I enjoyed it. It was like kind of like a roller coaster ride, especially when you get that portion where Xavier dies.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Drew, what did you think about how this book ended?
Oh, I loved how this book ended. There's all kinds of action. It was like, whoa, here it comes.
I mean, this fight scene, when first of all, Wolverine, man. Who's going to stop Wolverine? You know what stops Wolverine? The guy who shoots him in the eye and puts him down. And then this is where Laura, and then he gets shot in the eye again. And he's like, again. And that's where Laura Kinney's with the, you heal too slow. And he goes, that's what you keep telling me.
Dude,
and then it culminates with Wolverine jumping into Predator X. He literally gets eaten by Predator X so he can cut his way out because he has impenetrable and unburnable skin.
Did you know that Predator X was gonna? Because Predator X takes out.
Was it Exodus?
I don't know. It was big at the end. I can't remember what but you knew that this beast, as it's growing, and for 12 issues, is galloping towards. After this baby, that something's he's gonna come in huge at the end. And who was it? Was it I can't remember who he took out at the end. It was a. God, man, let's find. I think
he does take out Bishop's arm as well.
He does take out Bishop, right? He takes out Bishop, and then nobody can take this thing down. And Wolverine's like, well, if we can't penetrate from the outside. And he jumps off the cliff and right down into his gut and decides to take him out from the inside. Classic Wolverine. I thought that was kind of cool.
Classic.
Yeah, so then it ends with Cyclops is the one who's eventually holding this baby by the time the smoke is cleared. And that's when you get the baby reaching up in the Cyclops' pocket and taking out that picture of Scott and Jean. And all of a sudden, all these memories come flowing back in the Cyclops. Of being empathetic to Jean and her telepathic situation, all of his original trainings, and he gives the baby back to Cable and tells him, get it out of here, let it form its own opinions, help it stay safe. Or actually, you know what the other funny thing is, I kind of noticed at the end, he calls it him at first. He didn't even know it was a girl. He was. Yeah. So he was just thinking about it really as an object, I think, at that point, and not really a person. So by the time he finally held that baby and realized this is an actual person and we need to take care of it. So I think it became instead of being just a salvation, he wanted to make sure it was just a person who got the safety. And that's why he gave it back to Cable. Cable hops back in a time stream, but Bishop tries to shoot Cable, accidentally hits Xavier. And that's when our story ends with Cyclops declaring no more X-Men. That probably didn't last long. But Andy, what did you think of? You said that this ending, you wanted to read more. So, what were your final thoughts on Messiah Complex?
Oh, dude, seriously, you get to that last page, and it's like I'm going right back into this cinematic approach thought process. It's like you get to the end of the movie and they cut to the last blank screen and roll the credits. And you're like, no, I need more. You're telling me I have to wait? No, give me more now.
Wait a minute, dude. Charles Xavier is laying dead on the floor. This girl's still stuck 80 years in the future. He just left with the baby. What's going on? Yeah, you definitely want him more. Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's just done very, very, very well. And like I said, from start to finish, I felt like almost I was experiencing a movie. Just the way the action is portrayed, the way the story flows, the inconsistencies and differences in the art were absorbed. I absorbed them very well to the point where I wasn't paying a lot of attention to that. I was paying attention to a lot of the action and the details in the panels. Let's kid you guys not. From start to finish, you guys know, reading this book, there is a ton of substance art-wise in every page. And the pages that don't have that depth of art substance, it's for a reason. Like the X-23 Lady Deathstrike fight. It's because they want you to focus on that fight. They want you to focus on their movements and the battle at hand. So, God, that was dope, man. I got to read some more.
What did you think, JB?
One of my all-time favorite reads. Absolutely. Seriously. I mean, this has been one of my X-Men reads. I've wanted us to do this book for so long. So when it came up, I'm like, yeah, I can't wait to read it again. This is probably the 5th time I've read that. 4th or 5th time I've read this. I'm serious.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Drew's busy playing with toys. So we're going to get
playing with toys. Look, Fish Tropic said, do you have the Sentinel? You're goddamn right I have the Sentinel. Look, Xavier's dead, okay? It's not the first time. It won't be the last. Don't worry about it.
All right. So we're going to give some final scores, and then we're going to talk about what to read after this. So, Andy, as usual, I'm going to turn it over to you to give your final score and assessment of Messiah Complex.
9.9. Blue. This is, for as well as this is done, I would be shocked if part 2 and part 3 aren't done just as well. So these are going on the Christmas holiday list. They're going on the birthday list, and they're going to make its way to my bookshelf in hardcover, omnibus, or special format so that I can reread these and enjoy them in the years to come. They deserve a place on my bookshelf.
What about you, Drew?
I'm going to go 9.6. It's really good. There's a lot of great action. The art inconsistencies at the beginning of this and the one shot with Silvestri, I think, kind of take a couple points off for me. And the fact that it's just it's very well done, but it's still all over the place in a way that it kind of could be streamlined. But I think 9.6 is a hell of a grade.
JB?
9.8. It's got to be a 9.8. This is, right up there for me. And anyone that hasn't read it, read it. Seriously.
Nice. Yeah, I think I'm going to go 9. I think I'll go 9.8 as well, because why not? I agree with Drew on the art consistencies. That's probably what keeps giving me from like an absolutely perfect score. But this book does what every comic book event should do. It introduces all these characters together in one conflict. And by the time you're done reading it, it has put over so many characters better. You want to keep reading these other characters. And like I said, I wanted to read Jamie Madrox's book for the first time ever. This rereading, I was interested in the character Surge from New X-Men. James Proudstar Warpath, I can't wait to see him in X-Force in his story, as well as X-23 and that whole thing. Like, they branch off of this so well and give you so many new characters that you want to love and appreciate after reading this. It's what a tie-in should be, in my opinion. So I guess what to read after that, the obvious ones would be the trilogy of the Messiah trilogy, I guess you'd call it. So you got Messiah War, which this only ties in X-Force and Cable. So this one, in terms of everything else, in my opinion, is a pretty simple read. I actually got a chance to read a little bit of it today. It only involves the future storyline, what's going on, and like I think they skipped like 900 years into the future. And look who's joined the team this time. You got Domino, and then you got Old Man Deadpool, who is from that timeline. He got locked in a refrigerator for like 800 years, and you get to see that version of Deadpool team up with X-Force and Cable, and it's absolutely as hilarious as you think it would be. So I definitely recommend at least reading Messiah War. It's only like 6 or 7 issues total, I believe. Wouldn't hurt to read the rest of X-Force so you know what's going on. At least on the Cable side, you kind of know what's going on. He's just running away from Bishop. Hope, as you can see, has gotten a little bit older in the title. She's like a 9-year-old by the point they get to Messiah War. So that means about a decade has passed in Cable's perspective. The other crazy thing that happens in this is you can kind of see Cyclops being that jerk that we all know and love. That kind of leads to Schism. Cyclops literally has the option to let them save Boom Boom from this other character, or he could flip a switch, have them set 9 years into the future or 900 years into the future, and go after Cable and Hope. And he flips that switch in the middle of a freaking battle. So by the time X-Force gets to the future, they're blood covered, they're soaked in blood, they're beat up. They have a teleporter who's not even really on their team, who's officially on the team now because there's in the future with them. A lot of fun stuff going on here. And the one that I really need to refresh myself on and reread is Second Coming, which is the finale of the whole Second Coming or the whole Messiah storyline. So, Drew, did you get a chance to read Second Coming? Because you probably remember this a little bit better.
I haven't reread it yet, but it leads into the Hope, Generation Hope.
That's right.
And which was another fun series where Hope is more of an adult now. She's in her late teens, early 20s, and she's leading a new X-Men team. So there are more X-Men being born every day at this point, manifesting every day, and they need to train. I love the way that this story, this trilogy leads into Schism, and man, I want to read Schism. Knowing where all of this is going after this, I want to read Schism.
Yeah, your best runs, I would say, like not tie-in stuff, but your best runs, I think. X Factor is always fun. I feel like they're a lot less. They're not tied as much into the stuff going on, but they still appear in there. Thus, the Southern Comic Geek Peter David observation earlier. I don't think Peter David liked tying in as much after this, but I highly recommend all of the X-Force stuff. The Craig Kyle Chris Yost X-Force team, and you have Clayton Crane and Mike Choi as your 2 artists on that book. Before Clayton Crane was a cover artist, he did most of the interiors on X-Force. So if you like Clayton Crane, you're at least going to enjoy X-Force for the Clayton Crane art. But you had like X-23 on the team, Wolfsbane, Warpath's on that team, Domino joins the team. You get some Deadpool fun every once in a while. And then that eventually becomes Uncanny X-Force with Rick Remender, and people love that run as well.
Fantastic run.
The Kid Apocalypse stuff in there. And then, like Drew said, you get X-Men Schism, which leads to 2 very awesome, actually really 3 awesome X-Men books. Because eventually you get the first part of All New X-Men, where they bring in the young X-Men original team. Beast teleports up from the past. It overstayed its welcome, but that first arc is a lot of fun. Uncanny X-Men, you get Bendis and Chris Bocciolo on that one. And Magic really shines in that run as well. Magneto comes back to the team. And then Wolverine and the X-Men, which they run the Jean Grey School for the Gifted. And Kitty Pryde gets a chance to come back to the team. She's really awesome in that. And yeah, there's just a lot of great X-Men that follows this trilogy. So, Drew, anything else to add to that? Did we cover all the good reads?
Yeah, I think that X-Men just keeps getting better and better at this point. It just spawns off in so many different directions and is a lot of fun. And this also leads in, like, once you get to Schism, you're at the point where, like, the Marvel movies don't want the X-Men to be a thing anymore. And people are always like, oh, well, you know, they're downplaying the X-Men. No, there's so many great stories. There's so many great branches of this thing. A lot of it all spawns from that No More Mutants that leads into House of M. And it's just from that point forward, it's just ongoing great stories. I can't say enough good things about them. So yeah, let's read more X-Men. Let's go ahead and do a War and Second Coming next week and the week after that. I mean, we can throw these polls away. I like Future Imperfect. I do, but like I'd rather read Messiah War. Let's come on.
Hey, the fans.
Hey, guess what? Though next week's
to
gonna be a great episode, folks. Tune in.
The fans spoke. They want more George Perez, Drew. All right.
We'll get some Maestro.
Let's figure out this wild card situation. So let me get a share screen going here, and we're gonna figure out who's getting what wild card here. So let me go to this wheel of names. So basically, it's got 3 of us on here.
If we pick, if we get we get picked, we get to do our pick. Is that the deal?
Yeah. So basically, whoever we'll say Marvel. So we're going to delegate the Marvel wild card first. So whoever gets the Marvel wild card is the name who lands here. So I'm gonna go. Let's just spin it. Who's going to get the Marvel wild card?
This lands on Drew.
Oh no, it's going to be me. I get the Marvel wild card.
There you go.
All right, so we're going to remove me. So what are we going to do next? Second in sales, DC. All right, who's going to get the DC wild card, Andy or Drew? Let's spin the wheel and make the deal, as they say. Let's see what's going to happen here. Who's getting the DC? Oh, no, it's Andy. Mr. DC Comics himself, ComicManAndy, gets the DC wild card, which means Drew gets the independent wild card.
Okay, I know exactly what I'm picking. So
upset.
We'll there wait a couple weeks, and then I'm going to throw my wild card and make you.
That is like the exact opposite placement of what I thought would the wild cards would be. So yeah. So I guess those can be thrown at any point in time. So any takers? Andy, Drew, before we keep going. Not yet. Okay.
I got one in the bag, but not yet. Not yet.
All right. So that means next week we're officially finally getting a chance to read Hulk, Future Imperfect, Peter David. We're going back to the Peter David well, too, because he did work on this. And George Perez. So that's going to be a great read as well. But
exactly.
Man.
They're converting.
All I know is, JB, it's been an absolute pleasure having you back on the show.
Hey,
you're definitely welcome back.
Fellas.
Any read, anytime, man. JB, where can people find you and what you got going on?
Well, I'm not doing all the same stuff I used to. The channel is kind of evolving and changing a little bit. I've been I put out my first podcast. I'm huge into the Star Wars Mandalorian thing right now, actually, and the Star Wars comic books, man. If you're not reading the current runs of Darth Vader and Bounty Hunters and Star Wars, and you're absolutely missing out, man. So I dropped a brand new video that'll drop tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. It's going to be the first ever preview for Marvel Legends for what's coming out in 2021. It's about 4 minutes long, 4.5 minutes long, set to music. And that's what I got coming up next tomorrow morning.
Awesome.
Marvel Legends.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to that. Drew, where can people find you?
If you go to the YouTube search bar and you type in DruManchu, and then you scroll down to like maybe the 45th name on there, you'll find my channel. And on that channel, you'll find that earlier this evening, I opened a box of comics that I won. Yes, that's right. I won. I was victorious in the special prize category of the October Reads Comics contest. Wow. From C. Woodard19, and he sent me some fantastic books, so you guys can see those. You can also probably catch me on Thursday. I think we're going to do a show on Thursday, and I'd be remiss if I didn't shout out the fact that Mainframe Comic Con is teaming up with our friends at Comic Sketch Art. If you guys have ever been to a con, you know how legit that is. There are several different prints that are going to be signed, several different opportunities for mail-ins for autographs and signatures, different opportunities to get 9.8 CGC certified graded books signed by these creators. We're also doing a huge event on Black Friday, calling it Bat Friday. Check out mainframecomiccon.com for more information.
What about you, Andy? Where can people find ComicManAndy?
Ooh, you just got to hit that little @ symbol right there and say ComicManAndy. Find me on all those social media platforms and hang out. Let's talk comic books.
Look at this guy with his overlays. Fucking shameless plug of cock over there. Discovery. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
You asked
Andy's
her,
like,
"Can you
Andy's like, you can find
Yeah,
me,
it's
and
right
JB's like, I
here.
got graphics, bitch.
I got graphics.
Exactly. Running OBS. But you can find me on my own channel learning how to do stuff like what JB does down here with OBS and other editing software. At Monday's mail call, you can find me on my channel. You can find me here on the Monday Modern Men every Monday night, and New Comic Book Day Wednesday on my channel, and the Mandalorian Friday. I'm trying to do like a 15-minute Mandalorian episode over there, which has been a ton of fun.
Nice.
More importantly, you guys can find me on the Comic Core just about any night of the week, usually when I can help out. But it's hunting season up here in the Great North, so you might not see me at all.
All right, you can find me. Let's see if I can cover his thing up. I didn't know it was going to. Anyway, you can find me at youtube.com/C119. Tomorrow I'll be doing the Tuesday night live stream, and I think I'm going to take some inspiration from our pal Rob Worst on the Not Near Mint show. On his Not Near Mint show, I can't even say it anymore. It's an hour 20 minutes in, guys. On his show on Wednesdays, he's been counting down, along with his panel, their top 10 favorite modern books, bronze books, so on and so forth. I think I'm going to do my top 10 favorite modern books in my collection for the Tuesday night live stream tomorrow. So I'm going to put together a list, show off some books, and have some fun, because I really haven't been getting a lot of stuff from my local shop. I've been reading, having fun with you guys, and doing these reviews here, and so on and so forth. So I think I'm just going to pull some books out of the collection, show them off, and do that. And then you can probably find us on Fridays, Comic Core Roundtable, Friday, 10 p.m. Eastern. And then speaking of Comic Core content, you can come right back here tomorrow at 10 p.m. for the Golden Guys. Everybody loves those Golden Guys. Wednesday, the greatest comic book show of all time. ComicManAndy will be on that panel, of course, along with Bear Island Comics, Whitewell Comics, John's Comics with Kids, and Jason Cantu, a.k.a. Comics Misexplained. One of the best panels there is for sure. But guys, this has been awesome. We'll see you next week for Hulk, Future, and Perfect. Take it easy, guys.